What's up, Wastelanders? It is I, Rosador, your host. Wait, I'm always the host. Now, some of you may be thinking, wait, did you do an FNV Regulator run already? Well, yeah, kind of. I did a Faction Warriors run, and our good old Vigilante here just happened to get the best time out of the 5 grunt units we ran. I always loved this faction from Fallout 3. It's a real shame that's not more important to the main story, as in at all. But at least here we can give them some real love and focus. On screen now is a list of everything that's available to us. Really digging that combat shotgun in particular, especially with the ammo varieties here in good old Fallout New Vegas. All in all, solid variety. Next up is our special allocation, and gotta say, not too shabby. Now, unlike who we've been playing as up to this point, I couldn't find any tagged skills for the Regulator, and really, that's not as big a deal as it is in Fallout 3, since there are no bobbleheads here in the Mojave, unfortunately. So I went ahead and made my own. Guns, melee weapons, and science. I was considering energy weapons in lieu of the laser rifle and pistol we can use, but, you know, they're also science-y weapons, and it's just a great skill to invest in anyway. Let's talk a bit about the Regulators before we set the scene for how ours is here in the Mojave. The Regulators are a group of vigilantes who try to do good in the Capital Wasteland and are generally a solid good group of people, as there is no law of the land back out east. Of course, individual settlements like Megaton and Rivet City have laws pertaining to their individual settlements, but there's no central government like the NCR or Caesar's Legion over here. In a region where slavers, raiders, and barbarous supermutants run amok, those trying to survive in the Capital Wasteland really could use a good group like the Regulators. Heck, even a Brotherhood chapter went rogue for a similar cause. Also, Lucas Sim of Megaton is a Regulator. I thought that was a pretty cool little detail. With all of that said, let's set the scene. I'm actually connecting our timeline with the one from our previous run, where we ran through Fallout 3 as an NCR Trooper. I figure our lone troop, while never signing up with the Regulators, would be on good terms with them. Her NCR uniform is alien to most of the Capital Wasteland, and the Regulators certainly would be no exception to that. Tales of a world out west would capture the minds and imaginations of many, though few would have the means to actually survive the trip to a Union Station as well as clear through it. Sonora Cruz, leader of the Regulators, has sent our Regulator, along with a small squad, to establish a small base of operations out in the Mojave Wasteland. Though our Regulator and our heroine from the last run have never formally met, our protag has learned a bit through word of mouth. What she couldn't learn from stories of our NCR Trooper has since been learned during our Regulator's time here in the Mojave Wasteland. As one who seeks to bring justice to those that would do harm to others or commit acts of evil. Yeah, I used the Powder Gangers as my intro script fodder. I felt that was an obvious choice, and don't you worry, it's not the last we're going to be seeing of them. But I think it's pretty clear that our Regulator will be helping out settlements whenever she can, and just like with Vance, our Regulator is not the Courier. Yet their destinies remain intertwined, having been in Goodsprings the night Benny and his great con goons ambushed Courier Six, the former killing our favorite mailman. Our Regulator has taken it upon herself to bring justice to the Courier. As far as she knows, the Courier was killed for a reason, but at this time doesn't know the why of Benny's motive. It was cold-blooded murder, and it must be answered for. Oh, and real quick, Ace left us a pretty sweet idea. I do like this idea quite a bit. I will try to implement it in some way in future runs. Obviously, this run I had already completed, as well as the next run, which is Gary, so we won't be seeing that idea implemented there. But in future runs, I will try my best to have a little corpse or something for the Lone Wander or the Courier in the grave. I think that's a great idea. And if you guys have any suggestions, don't be shy to leave them in the comments. And now, just a reminder that this and Gary's run, which is next, are the last we'll be seeing of Tale of Two Wastelands for a while, but that doesn't necessarily mean I can't do these crossovers. I do have a couple of ideas in mind for future runs, but I'm not going to spoil that surprise. I think there's at least one of them that you guys will really like, though. And hey, what a perfect time to start commentating on the action, squaring down with Caesar's Legion here at Nipton. I felt that was the obvious choice. Now, the reason why I stopped firing upon Wolpez is because when I saw him go down, I thought I had killed him, but, you know, hindsight's always 20/20, not through the power of editing. I obviously didn't. Aside from my little boo-boo in the beginning, we're able to make a quick little comeback here, and honestly, you see in an on-screen, we dispatched the Legionaries in record time. Now, what confuses me is that we killed all of them, and we should be in Vilified, but we're still neutral. I don't get it. Well, that's going to make traveling a little bit easier, at least. I don't know if that was a bug, or maybe there was a Legionary who ran away and I just never found him or something, but yeah, this is the first time this has ever happened to me, for challenge videos and in casual play. Next up, we're going to help the good people of Novac help out Manny Vargas with clearing out the ghouls here. And it's a good place for us to get stealth boys. There are guaranteed stealth boys to spawn inside of Repconn headquarters. And now, by the time our regulator finds the ghouls who are holed up here, the non-feral ones anyway, I think it's pretty clear that she would want to help them out. I think any decent regulator would. I don't recall the regulators having any sort of prejudice towards ghouls. I do like to imagine that our regulator is quite surprised at her encounter with the Night Kid Davison in particular. A big variety of super mutant not attacking us on sight and actually asking for help? Well, okay, if that diffuses the situation, then no problem. However, there is one obstacle in the way in the form of Harlan here, who's just really kind of a jerk. You see, we could just go up there and check and defuse the situation, but he threatens to kill us, and being that he's the one holding up everybody here, I think the answer is rather obvious. Harlan himself doesn't take too many hits to put down, but with his hunting rifle and our low armor, he does quite a bit of damage to us before he himself goes down. And yeah, I know Harlan is holed up here because of the Nightkin, but offering him a way out, a peaceful way out, and him refusing it, it kind of makes it hard for me personally anyway to justify him as any sort of a good guy or person who's in real need of help when he's the one holding up everybody. Now, if we were a Nightkin, I would totally get him wanting to attack us and being hostile, but we're just trying to help out, man. Now, Davison and the Nightkin are here because they're looking for stealth boys, and the Nightkin need stealth boys to quell their addiction to them. Very sad little subplot. Davison is understandably just a bit miffed that there's no stealth boys here, but we're able to convince him that we're telling the truth, so being true to his word, he and the Nightkin crew leave. Now, in previous challenge videos, we've talked with Jason Bright, and we've seen how all that goes down, obtaining what we need to make the launch go off. But I want to show you this little unmarked skill check here. Now, we can use this terminal to either sabotage the launch or recalibrate the coordinates so that they can get to their destination faster. Through use of mentats to buff up our intelligence to 5 and a programmer's digest, we're able to recalibrate it and send them on their merry way. It doesn't affect our mission at all because Manny Vargas doesn't care how the ghouls are cleared out. But it's nice to see that investment in intelligence and science is rewarded here. As we make our way out of the control center, we're going to head back to Novac, talk to Manny, get our reward, which is the location of Benny, a nice little chunk of experience points, and some Novac reputation. We do hit level 6 on the way out, which is very nice, and it takes me a good second here to decide what perk I want exactly. There's a lot of good ones we have access to already. For me, it's real close between Shotgun Surgeon and Toughness. At the end of the day, though, I do decide to go with Toughness because we can't take much damage, and any DT that we can get is going to help immensely going forward. Next up is Boulder City, and remembering that Benny was accompanied by a pair of Great Khans when Courier 6 was murdered. Now, our Regulator knows that the Great Khans were complicit in what happened, and while she doesn't know that the Great Khans were in turn deceived by Benny, they were guys just trying to make a quick buck. They are still raiders, and she's been here long enough to know that the Great Khans are bad news. So we're going to take matters into our own hands here and just wipe the Great Khans off the face of Boulder City. The Regulators may be well-meaning people, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're nice people. When it comes to dealing justice, justice is swift, cold, and harsh at times. And, I mean, the Great Khans are still raiders at the end of the day. And hey, unlike in our advance run, Private Ackerman doesn't stand in front of us while we're trying to kill a Great Khan, so we're able to save him this time too, which is pretty nice. All that's left is to take out Jessup and his little buddy inside, and starts off kind of funny where I accidentally shoot at the cash register. But the cash register just might be the most dangerous obstacle in here. I love how that Great Khan sheathed his weapon and then just gave up. Not sure why that happened, but it's Fallout New Vegas. Fun little things like that always happen. Now, the NCR reputation boost you gain going this way isn't as high as if you do the optimal solution, but we've helped out the NCR quite a bit up to this point, and I think in most instances our Regulator would get along quite nicely with the NCR. And we're not quite done dealing with raiders and thugs just yet. I did say earlier in the video that we would see the Powder Gangers a little bit later on. Tracking down Samuel Cook and his band of Powder Gangers to Vault 19, well, there's only one thing our Regulator's going to be doing here: dealing swift, cold, harsh justice. I feel like Top from Dragon Ball Super would really like that logic, and this character. And Samuel demonstrates why he's the leader of the Powder Gangers in this area by sitting there and taking some lead therapy to the back of the head. It's always a good spot for that. Now, this does attract the attention of the other ringleader here, one Philip Lem, but he goes down pretty easily courtesy of our awesome Chinese assault rifle. Killing either Samuel or Philip will lock us out of why can't we just be friends. But we're not looking to make friends here. And I, in particular, am looking to make a nice deal of caps and experience points from our time invested here. And now, these powder gangers are a bit tougher, because some of them do have metal armor, some of them have decent weapons, definitely tougher than the ones back at the NCRCF, and of course the little small party that raids Goodsprings. What I find interesting about this place in particular is that you can kill the heck out of the powder gangers and Goodsprings, the NCRCF, and even the ones in the small little camps outlining the southwestern part of the Mojave. But you can still help these guys out if you really want to. You can get them to surrender to the NCR. You can help Samuel Cook get him and his powder gangers to join up with the Great Khans, which, well, not all of them are going to be able to, considering how brutal the Great Khan initiation ritual is. And hey, speaking of the Great Khans, we're going to have a little callback to those guys here in just a sec, because we are going to Vault 3 next. And as long as we're disguised as a Great Khan, we can get safe passage, at least for a time. The faction disguise mechanic works really well here in particular, because it's not like these fiends are going to be able to discern who's a Great Khan and who isn't, although it's pretty funny that you can just own up to the fact that you're not a Great Khan. We're not going to do that though, because we are here to take out one motor runner. And as awesome as the disguise mechanic was for getting us in, I have to show you guys something that's pretty funny. And another good thing about being able to get in here peacefully is getting the reverse pulse cleaner if you ever want to help out the Brotherhood of Steel, which I really doubt we're going to this run. Not sure yet, though. We'll see. So let me show you a fun little trick here. As we're setting up to take out Motor Runner here, we are still disguised, and we need to be disguised in order for this to work. We get him aggroed, that's all well and good, and his dogs don't actually aggro us. We don't have Animal Friend either. Our charisma's not high enough for that. We switch back to our Regulator, Duster, and it takes us a second to take him out because he likes to zigzag around a little bit. But, you know, he's still lightly armored at the end of the day. Nothing our Chinese AR can't take care of. But notice how we're not being aggroed by anybody else. And as long as you're careful, going through Vault 3, or making our way back out, I should say, is essentially free, even with us killing the pair of guard dogs. We open the door, and we can pot shot one fiend, hang back. The other fiend is probably not all that there, not surprisingly. So then we can go ahead and take out the other fiend guarding what used to be the entrance to Motor Runner's throne room, I guess? Yeah, we'll call it a throne room. Now, of course, if you choose to do it this way, saving the Ranger, Bryce Anders, becomes a lot more difficult, because as you're making your way out, the fiends are still neutral to you. They will go straight for Bryce Anders, who somehow breaks out of his confinement. Not sure how he pulled that off, but whatever. We didn't get the quest to save him anyway, so all's well ends well. We even got a sweet safe house key from the NCR out of the deal. Sweet. We're not quite done dealing with the NCR just yet, as we've been helping out Tech Sergeant Reyes. And we end up in good old Camp Gulf and have us a friendly little chat with one Chief Hanlon. Chief Hanlon is the leader of the NCR Rangers. He's also the head of intelligence here in the Mojave Wasteland, and he's been quite a little rascal with sending a bunch of misinformation around in hopes of attempting to force the NCR to withdraw. And back during the first battle of Hoover Dam, he was the commanding officer who saw success against the Malpais Legate. But, yeah, he's going through some times right now. I have no earthly idea what convinced him that this plan to sabotage intel and information was a good idea. But then again, Chief Hanlon is a desperate, ultimately broken man. It doesn't make sense, but, you know, when people are in the mindset of Chief Hanlon, they're not going to make rational decisions. There is one quote that comes to mind in regards to Chief Hanlon. You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become a villain. Now, of course, our Regulator would want to turn this guy in. I mean, would have gone for the kill, but there's NCR Rangers everywhere, so turning him in is the next best thing. And he takes himself out rather than facing justice. Now, that Ranger Sequoia we can't use, but all you gotta do is pick it up and make sure you're hidden, loot it, and it's as good as yours at the cost of a pinch of karma. And speaking of taking out more thugs and evildoers, well, good thing Gloria Van Graff decided that we didn't need a background check to get employed here, because we let in some guy with a bomb and he does our work for us. Pretty nice. This is always a great thing to do if you're helping out the Brotherhood of Steel and you've elected to install Elder Hardin and throw McNamara out of leadership, because Elder Hardin will want you to come here and lay waste to the Van Graffs. But you can have that guy do it for you. You still gotta kill Simon and the Silver Rush Crier, but that's a lot easier than taking on an entire fortress of Van Graff thugs, all with energy weapons that are in pretty good condition too. As for our Regulator, however, we almost died to Simon in one-on-one combat. It was a little reminder to me that this isn't gonna be so easy. The Van Graff armor is pretty decent, and if we're not careful, his Van Graff plasma rifle can make quick work of us. But through careful maneuvering and use of healing items, we're able to survive the encounter. And we're not done dealing with Raider scum just yet. Circling back to Red Rock Canyon, despite the fact we're vilified with the Great Khans and they're not attacking us, well, we're gonna bring the fight to them. I like that offhand remark from that Great Khan NPC about going to Camp Forlorn Hope. I do like to poke fun at the NCR. They're not my favorite faction, never have been, neither in Fallout New Vegas nor Fallout 2. But for all that the Great Khans like to complain about Bitter Springs, I mean, maybe that wouldn't have happened if the Great Khans weren't a bunch of raiders trying to attack innocents and taking pot shots at NCR caravans. The Great Khans brought Bitter Springs upon themselves. Yes, NCR Command was wrong to not discern combatant from civilian, but if the Great Khans didn't live life the way they do, things wouldn't have escalated to that point either. The NCR is certainly not blameless in what happened. But at the same time, it never would have happened if the Great Khans didn't go around trying to pick fights they can't possibly win. And the reason I was stealthed while taking out Melissa was because I had aggroed a Deathclaw, but it didn't attack us in combat. We were in caution, so I was like, alright, stealth boy, and it went away. Alright, the Fiends have been cleared out. We've cleared out the Powder Gangers. We've cleared out the Great Khans. It's time for our Regulator to get to business and square down with Benny. And since we took the NCR Railway last time, we're gonna go in with a bit of a different strategy here. This is where our investment in science really pays off, and no, I don't know why we're able to tinker with a Securitron when we've never worked with one before, but hey, we have the power of science on our side, and that's all that matters. Speaking of handling things a little differently, we're gonna make our way on over to Benny here, and actually the Black Widow checks here, although the dialogue would be a little bit different with our Regulator, actually does make a bit of sense here, because in canon, Benny doesn't know who our Regulator is, so we're just some good-looking lady who's hitting on Benny, and Benny's like, oh, okay, let's go. And yeah, I sent Boone home because I don't think he wants to watch. And we are left to score us a nice, quiet, clean kill. Benny's game was, in fact, rigged from the start. Having found that platinum chip on Benny, our Regulator then goes on to think, well, I should probably return this to its owner. Mr. House, was it? Well, he's at the Lucky 38, maybe we'll be allowed inside. And it turns out that while our Regulator has been on her quest for justice, well, she's earned a little bit of a reputation for herself to the point where one Alario of Caesar's Legion, a spy openly announcing who he is to try to get us to help him and his lord out. Well, I think we have a good answer to that proposition. I always got a kick out of that little second chance mechanic. We just cleaned out all of the Legion. I know I didn't show a lot of it, but I've shown that in other runs, so decided not to here. You'd think that Caesar would have gotten the memo the first time, but apparently not, although he does have trouble remembering some things as of late. So yeah, we have to head to the Securitron bunker for Mr. House, and in order to do that, we have to just, clear out Fortification Hill, as you do. I was actually thinking about bringing Cass here with us. She would make a pretty good Regulator, I think, given her way of wanting to resolve the whole thing about her caravan but with Alice McClafferty and Gloria Van Graff. But I always like to bring Boone here whenever I do these kinds of runs because it just feels right to bring him here, And we are a lot more powerful than when we were when we played as Three Dogs, so, you've been seeing it on screen. We've been bulldozing through these Legion areas, mostly with our combat shotgun. And it's here at Fortification Hill where the varieties of ammo really start to come in handy. That said, even with toughness, we still can't take a whole lot of damage. I don't know if you guys knew this or not, but trench coats aren't exactly the most protective form of combat gear. I mean, hey, do you want efficient or do you want awesome? You can't have both. Sad Enclave power armor noises. Oh, and you may have noticed throughout this playthrough that periodically on our top left corner of our screen, it'll say, to enter VATS, push V. Nope, I haven't used VATS a single time yet, so that's been pretty cool. And I know, perfectly standard to bring up a stipulation almost 20 minutes into the challenge run, but I haven't used VATS mode because canonically our Regulator is not Courier 6, therefore does not have a Pit Boy. I am allowed to use the Pit Boy for the purposes of inventory because it is our knapsack effectively, and I can only hotkey so much. That's also why I don't make use of our flashlight. One thing I have really enjoyed about this run so far is that we've gotten some great use out of all three of our weapons, and yeah, technically I can use a laser pistol and laser rifle if I want to, but I elected to not really bother with it. I have a couple of times, but not for anything too important. The only time I made use of our laser weaponry was diffusing the situation with the Kings and the NCR in favor of the Kings. I figured to just show the Van Graffs back when I did, because we've seen the Kings a couple of times, and I like to try to keep the footage fresh as possible anyway. But I have to say that I'm pleasantly surprised with how well we're doing here at Fortification Hill so far. I mean, we did pretty good as 3-Dog in Boone, and we are stronger than when we were playing as 3-Dog, but still, really nice to see this go as smoothly as it is. And if you're curious about the name, I named her Marigold, after the flower, Mari for short. Now, last time I did want to get the GRA challenge to kill Caesar with either the knife or the combat knife with 3-Dog, but Boone kinda killed him a little too fast, which was also okay because very much an awesome in-character moment. Not gonna make that mistake this time, though. And to me, there's just something awesome about the idea of Caesar being killed by a woman in melee combat with a knife. Hey, if nothing else, Edward Sala would appreciate the irony of this historical propriety. Now, just like in our 3-Dog run, we're gonna give Boone a second to just take it all in and kinda relax outside, calm his nerves, while we go inside and we deal with Caesar's Praetorians ourselves. Now, I think this is gonna be a bit more challenging, because this time around we're not using VATS, and the Praetorians do move at, I believe, 25% faster, and the in-game reason for that is due to their physical conditioning, something I really like, by the way. Very nice attention to detail. And while this goes on, I just want to say I always enjoy doing this in particular as a female courier, whether, it's casual play or if it's, going forward we play other female characters in these challenge videos. Given how the Legion treats women, it kind of makes you wonder why a female character would even want to be affiliated with the Legion in the first place, and I'm drawn for justification for that. I think of a scene back in Dragon Age Origins. It's towards the end of the game when you're uncovering a slavery operation in Ferelden. It's something that the acting Regent Lord has basically looked the other way on. And as you're going through the slums of Denerim to uncover what's going on, and throughout the later stages of that part of the main quest, you end up talking to a female elf who is helping out with this whole slaver operation, and you have the option to ask her why she's doing this to her own people. And her answer is a cold one that really reflects the whole idea of trying to survive by any means necessary. And the female elf slaver's response in a nutshell is, well, why do I care about them? I'm making money, I'm trying to survive, and if I have to survive, whatever. So a similar line of thinking comes to mind for me whenever a female courier chooses to ally with Caesar's Legion. The courier is not a member of Caesar's Legion, therefore is not subjected to the laws in which Caesar's Legion will bring upon whatever land it, establishes a presence in. And for the courier, who is always wandering around, she is not gonna be stuck in a Mojave Wasteland that's controlled by Caesar or Lanius. It's not a nice moral character to play, but that's kind of the beauty of role-playing characters, is that you can play whatever you want to play. But obviously, here in this playthrough, our good Regulator is nothing like that, and wants to make the Mojave Wasteland a better place. And yeah, we just breezed our way through the Securitron bunker thanks to our handy-dandy science skill, and we get to put that into use here as well for the Boomers of Nellis. This time we have the science check required to use Loyal's little device, which will save us quite a bit of time. Next up is the Almertas, and as Vance, I did this same thing last time but forgot to show it in the video, so we're going to check it out here. We weren't able to sneak in any of our weapons, although funny enough, I might have been able to sneak in our laser pistol, but I don't have it. You just get up out of your chair, open the door, and then as soon as you run, the Almerta thugs will perceive Big Sal and Nero as the threat, and they'll actually help you. I love that regardless of which route you take, you don't have to use violence at all during the Almerta section of the story. Now at this point I'm sure you're thinking, why help Mr. House? Well, I think Yes Man's out of the fray because currently our Regulators group is way too small to be able to run New Vegas, and besides, The Regulators' purpose isn't to run an area in New Vegas, it's just to establish a base of operations in the Mojave Wasteland. The Caesar's Legion obviously is a no-go. I was actually considering a route where we would play our Regulator to where the Regulator and her little group would get absorbed into the NCR, which I think would actually kind of work out. But ultimately what drew me against that was that the NCR is so mired in bureaucracy that it goes against the Regulators' whole vigilante style, and Mr. House doesn't really care what people do with their private time, and I think that Mr. House would handsomely reward a humanized police force that can also be used to further protect New Vegas. And don't forget that once Mr. House establishes the free economic zone of New Vegas, it's more than that bit of the strip we see throughout our time throughout Fallout New Vegas. And being that Mr. House ultimately does want what's best for humanity, I think he would accept the Regulators' help with little problem, and they're a good bunch. They'll help keep New Vegas safe, which also keeps his tourism well intact. Tourists can feel safe working their way through not just the Strip, but Freeside as well, which is why we cleared out the Van Graffs, we helped out the followers of the Apocalypse, and we ensure that the Kings will never help the NCR, but we can still act as a nice buffer zone between them. All that's left to do to secure House's reign of New Vegas is go through Hoover Dam. Let's do this. Getting back on track for just a second, though, I also think that the Regulators would keep House in check and temper his judgment a bit, as it were. Because, you see, Mr. House is one who puts his investments in sense of business above all else, and considering that our Regulator helps him secure victory here, basically finishing what the Courier had started, you know, she's formidable, as are the other Regulators. He's going to want to keep them around. But yeah, to summarize, Caesar's Legion, obviously not. That goes completely against anything a Regulator would ever do. Yes, man, possibly, but our presence is just too small right now. And our leader is Sonora Cruz. In order to even attempt that, she'd have to be over here, and for our little scenario, she's not. She's still back in DC. The NCR? There's definitely a lot of good in the NCR, and the NCR and the Regulators, I think, would get along a fair bit. But at the end of the day, the NCR, just being what it is, with all the problems it has, the Regulators aren't going to sit around and wait for that whole snail's pace and Congress, nor do I see the Regulators just sitting around, despite the fact that they can just go down the hill, clear the ants out of the little caravan route, clear out the scorpions and the jackals nearby to make it safer. They wouldn't take too kindly to being ordered to just sit still, you know what I mean? But I do believe that the Regulators would see the benefit of having the NCR as an ally. So that leaves Mr. House, and Mr. House, again, for reasons I've already explained, I think would actually have a great relationship with the Regulators. And the Regulators also make Mr. House look good, because if they're like his police force, kind of, for the entire wasteland, that's just going to make him look better in the long run. It's going to make the prospect of going to New Vegas or the Mojave in general as a tourist very appealing. And the Regulators are certainly not stingy about whom they recruit. The Regulators and how they deal justice have no tolerance for things like raiders, slavers, or those whom would bully and attack the local populace. That's also why dealing with the Brotherhood of Steel out here in the Mojave Wasteland is something I can very much see the Regulators doing the way that Mr. House wanted it done. They wasn't the Brotherhood that our Regulators know back out east. But yeah, getting back to the action here, things are going pretty smoothly here at Hoover Dam. I actually didn't get killed by the Kenturians with their anti-material rifles for a change. That's pretty nice. So the Praetorians are pretty easy to clear out, especially with Cass in tow, so we're going to go ahead and cut straight to Legate Lanius. I wanted to start the fight with a combat knife, but I was like, oh wait, we'll get locked into dialogue with him, and the Regulators aren't about to even listen to Legate Lanius, so it's go time. Switching back to our combat knife, we'll go ahead and pop some turbo, as well as make use of the Tails of Chevalier to increase our melee weapon skill, thus damage. And I gotta say, it's a real good thing Super Slam procced when it did, because, well, Cass getting a face full of the Blade of the East is not very good for her long-term health. Nor is it good for Legate Lanius' long-term health when we pop a second helping of Turbo, and Super Slam procs enough to keep him down. Yeah, he's always very easy if you have a melee weapon in Super Slam. With Legate Lanius down, it's just a matter of taking down the two Praetorians, and our two Femme Fatales have cleared out Legate's camp, and now it's just time for us to deal with one General Oliver. Well, despite our best effort to try to talk him down when we don't have the skill checks to do so, Despite our best attempts to appeal to him, well, he thinks now's a good time to try and capitalize on an opportunity. But unfortunately for him, he decided to open fire, despite the fact we have an army of Securitrons led by Robert House himself backing us. Still, we did have to be careful here, because the veteran Rangers are no joke. Without that last turbo, things could have gone very differently. And hey, because we saved President Kimball, although General Oliver's death would anger the good president, he's not going to be able to do anything about it because just like Mr. House says, Kimball's going to be a little bit busy trying to get himself not thrown from office. Well, he's going to get thrown out anyway because the Mojave was a disaster for the NCR. I really hope you guys enjoyed that run. Do you agree with my assessment on what a regulator would do? Let me know in the comments if you agree with my assessment or if you would have taken a different route. For our next run, we're getting a double helping of the Mojave Wasteland when we come back here as Gary. As per voter's choice, you guys wanted the run, so that's what you're gonna get. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you at the next video. Later.